What if instead of watching the fountains at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, you were instead driving across a bridge to the luxurious Beau Rivage? Or if instead of watching the Volcano at the Mirage, you were staying at the luxurious Bombay Club? What if the man credited with building the modern Las Vegas ended up losing his empire over accusations of sexual assault and rape? Not to mention a federal investigation to meddling in a foreign government. Some of those things never came to pass, and tragically for Steve Wynn, several of them actually happened. Steve Wynn is credited with being the father of the modern-day Las Vegas experience, but it wasn't always a sure bet he would succeed in Sin City. Along with his successes, there have been personal tragedies and loss, lawsuits, and heavy allegations. Is Steve Wynn a business visionary that saw the future of gaming, or a man that took his power and wielded it to destroy the career of innocent young women who spoke out against him? Stick through to the end of this video for one of the most bizarre and twisted ends to a Vegas story that you might ever hear. From his early life, initial failure on the Las Vegas Strip, to his amazing impact to the city and recent troubling allegations, lawsuits, and his fall from grace. This is the story of Stephen A. Wynn. Now, creating a video on Steve Wynn isn't easy. He tends to have a habit of suing people if they say things about him that might damage him or his brand. Think I'm making that up? Think not. In 1997, he nearly put publisher Barricade Books out of business after they released an unauthorized biography about his life. Now sure, that book was suggested that he had direct ties to the mafia, but with this video, I need to tread lightly when we discuss how Steve was forced to leave the industry he revolutionized altogether. More on that later, but for now I guess we'll just start at the beginning, and that means the start of Steve's life. Back before there even was a Steve Wynn, and all there was a Stephen Allen Weinberg. His father changed the family name a few years after young Steve was born, claiming he wanted to avoid anti-Jewish discrimination. But if I had to speculate, it might have something to do with the somewhat controversial lifestyle his father was known for. But more on that in a second. Steve was raised in Utica, New York, and his father sent him to only the finest schools, with Steve graduating from the Manlius School, an expensive private school meant to keep Steve away from the same business his father had been involved in most of his life. So what business was that? The not-so-prestigious bingo parlor business, of which the senior Wynn ran several along the east coast of the United States. And if you thought that young Steve made his first trip to Las Vegas in the 1960s, you would be wrong. Having moved out to Sin City as a boy with his father, as his father attempted to move up to the big leagues and manage the bingo parlor at the then Silver Slipper. It was during this trip, which ultimately ended in a complete failure and bankruptcy of the parlor, that a few things became evident to the young Steve. Firstly, that his father had a really vicious gambling addiction, and that, as he was quoted as saying later in life, the only way to win in a casino is to own the casino. Nevertheless, his father tried to keep young Steve away from gaming, even sending him to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned his Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, with a career path that would next see him transfer to Yale Law School. A path which would change radically when he received a call in March of 1963, informing him tragically that his father had died during open-heart surgery. Upon traveling back to the family as the eldest son to help with settling his father's affairs, Wynn learned his father's gambling habit had not stopped in Vegas with the failed bingo parlor, but instead just kept going, to the tune of a staggering $350,000. And if that doesn't seem staggering right now, it was in 1963. In today's money, that translates with inflation to over $3.4 million. It was at that point that his father's plans to remain out of the family business ended, and Wynn entered into the bingo parlor industry, determined to right the ship and dig his family out of financial ruin. Within just 5 years, Wynn was able to turn the bingo parlor business around. He cashed out in order to head west to Las Vegas. His plan here was simple: become a minority shareholder in one of the original Strip casinos. But little did he know that he'd be caught in scandal nearly from year one. The story of Steve Wynn in Las Vegas starts with a property long turned to dust in the desert. And as we will see at the end of this video, Steve may have had, in a way, his revenge on the first deal that ever did him dirty in Las Vegas. It all started in 1967, with Steve taking a $30,000 loan and combining it with $15,000 of his own money. He bought into a group redeveloping what was previously known as the New Frontier. Now this would be Steve's first taste at the rotten legacy left by the mafia. After just a few years, it was discovered that the project had been financed with money linked to the Detroit Mafia. This also led Wynn to losing out for the first, and possibly the last time, to a fellow casino owner. And before long, the group decided to sell out to then King of Las Vegas, Howard Hughes, for $25 million. Because Steve had a small share in the project, just enough to earn profits from casino wins, he walked away with very little from the sale, and after a few years operating a wine and liquor importing company, Wynn was ready to re-enter the gaming industry in Las Vegas. By 1973, Wynn became the majority shareholder in the Golden Nugget in downtown Las Vegas, and was also at that time the youngest casino owner in the city. Wynn changed the way people viewed downtown Las Vegas, promoting the Golden Nugget as a destination where acts like Frank Sinatra, Dolly Parton, and Kenny Rogers would play. By 1983, Wynn had parlayed his investment into the Golden Nugget into a huge success, making what was at the time the smallest casino in Vegas into what was at the time the #1 most profitable. While downtown was a success, Wynn still had his sights set on what was then becoming known as the big leagues in Vegas, a shot to play the casino monopoly game on the main Las Vegas Strip. And if timing and location are everything, Wynn was certainly in the right place at the right time. You see, since Wynn first arrived in Las Vegas all those years ago, the casino industry had experienced a dramatic overhaul, with people like Wynn's banker friend E. Perry Thomas and state lawmakers changing laws in 1967 to allow corporations to own casinos and gaming licenses. The fact that Wynn was a bona fide legit business person with connections to Wall Street further helped him gain capital for his projects. All of this success was mixed with bitter personal experiences. Wynn divorced his wife, Elaine, whom he married in 1967 and 1986. Now, this is just the start of a cycle with what we will learn about Wynn later on in the video, with a string of relationships, lawsuits, and questions that would often set him off, at times storming out of interviews and allegedly going off on rants over his employees.
The question is, how can you be sure? How can you be positive? How can anybody? Well, you can't in this world. What you can be sure of is that in the end, honest people will do the right thing. That's why we all survived Mel Harris, and we kept our gambling licenses, and the state of New Jersey recommended our licensing after they investigated this. And if I don't see that sentence in this edited version of this tape, I will choke both of you after this question and answer.
It was in 1987, however, that Wynn changed the casino industry forever. Wynn sold his Atlantic City Golden Nugget property to help fund the project, and then did something unheard of, turning to Wall Street and financing the property using risky junk bonds. Junk bonds are bonds, essentially money lent out to be paid back later, which are considered very high risk. This means that lenders often expect them to fail, but will lend them out for high returns that they can offer. This was the first time that any casino property was financed by Wall Street, with past Vegas Strip locations getting crooked loans from Teamsters unions. Now, as this video is about Steve Wynn, we're not going to focus entirely on too many of the single casinos. Subscribe right now, because we'll be covering all of these on their own in dedicated videos. But all you need to know about the Mirage is that it was a huge financial risk, kicking off a new era of Las Vegas that would pave the way for the present day.
All eyes were focused on Wynn's Inn, the sprawling 3,000-room fantasy island that now dominates the Las Vegas Strip. The $620 million mega resort is the first built in Las Vegas in 15 years. It commands attention.
And the opening of the Mirage set a trend that would be followed for the next decade, a genius marketing move for a time before smartphones and digital cameras, but more on that in a minute. When the property next door came up for sale, Wynn purchased the land to develop a family-friendly resort which became the Treasure Island. Since Cirque did so well in the back parking lot of the Mirage years before, a custom-built theater was constructed. And when it opened in 1993, Mystere became the first resident Cirque act in Las Vegas's history. The opening of these properties brought something entirely new, not just to the inside of Las Vegas properties, but also to the outside, as Wynn constructed giant free shows for anyone to stop and see that ran on regular schedules. The Mirage Volcano shot flames into the night sky, while swashbuckling pirates dueled with swords and pyrotechnics at the Treasure Island, all part of a word-of-mouth advertising campaign to draw people to the properties and entice them inside. Again, in a world before YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, free publicity was hard to find, and Wynn had found the magic recipe. Wynn's next resort was set to open in 1998, but before this, the cracks in his clean casino mogul persona started to show. In 1997, a lawsuit against Wynn's company, Mirage Resorts, alleged that Wynn told cocktail servers that they were too overweight to serve drinks at the property. Quote, he said, "Lose the fat, lose the flab, and lose the ass." He slapped his own ass before walking out. A server at the time, who was 5'7" tall and 148 pounds, told the media. She was not alone. A group of women alleged the same treatment. But for Wynn, this was just the start of a string of allegations that would plague him in more recent years. Unfazed, the domination over Vegas would continue.
The Bellagio is advertising itself as having the very best in restaurants and shops.
Right, as we mentioned earlier in this hour, this was meant to be an aesthetic experience for everyone who comes here.
Steve Wynn's goal here really to raise the bar. He wanted to attract tourists, Juana, that maybe perhaps would skip Las Vegas. They might have thought it's a little too tacky for them. They'd go to Rome or to Paris or to London. Well, he really wants to attract that high-end visitor, the visitor here.
And after selling his company, Mirage Resorts, to MGM Grand Incorporated for $6.6 billion in June of 2000, he purchased the Desert Inn, took his company Wynn Resorts public in 2002, and officially became a billionaire in 2004, doubling his net worth from $650 million to $1.3 billion. The Wynn was built to replace the Desert Inn, and upon opening in 2005, it became the largest privately funded construction project in the nation's history at $2.7 billion. With the personal success came strain on his marriage. By the late part of the early 2000s, Steve and his wife Elaine, who helped run his company, were seeing trouble signs in their relationship. But undeterred, Wynn opened his final Las Vegas property, the Encore, on December 22, 2008.
3 years ago, I stood over there introducing you to Wynn Las Vegas. Now I'm following it up the best way I know how. This is Encore.
It was in 2010 that Steve and his first and second wife Elaine would finally divorce for good, with Elaine staying on as a director with his company board until 2015, and Steve remarrying in just 2011 in a ceremony where else but at the Wynn Las Vegas. And throughout his life, Wynn has been embroiled in multiple lawsuits, between book publishers claiming he had mafia ties to the creator of Girls Gone Wild, first over check fraud and then defamation of character. He even was accused by the United States government for acting as a foreign agent without properly registering in China. But it was in 2018 when, for the first time, Wynn faced a battle that it would seem even he might not be able to win. A battle with allegations of and sexual. It was then in 2018 when the Wall Street Journal first broke the story. A manicurist who earlier was paid $7.5 million settlement to remain silent, who had accused Wynn of raping her following a manicure. This was followed by a $20 million fine from the Nevada State Gaming Commission for completely ignoring these allegations in a timely manner in the first place. The allegations were quite severe, multiple women alleging a pattern of misconduct spanning decades. Accusations ranging from simply leering at women, using inappropriate language, and forcing acts to happen on demand, to even more bizarre stories of having specially trained German shepherds who only responded to German commands present to intimidate these women into compliance. The Wall Street Journal spoke to 150 people that all seemed to have the same type of story: rampant abuse of power, severe temper, and a man who made you scared to speak out for fear that you would never get another job working in the casino industry in Nevada or anywhere else for that matter. This, combined with a federal lawsuit filed in 2018 by former salon manager at the Wynn who accused Wynn of firing and blacklisting her from work after she came forward in 2006, led to Wynn stepping down from the company, bearing his own namesake. His official resignation came February 6 of 2018 when he announced that he would be cutting ties and moving on. Now, until the courts have their say, all of these allegations are simply accusations made by people, and this video is not casting any sort of doubt on the alleged victims or on the innocence or guilt of Wynn. As it stands now, Steve Wynn is, until proven guilty, still innocent. His namesake towers over skylines around the world, and regardless of what happens when the judge has their say, he was still a visionary that helped build Las Vegas, bring the casino gaming industry into focus as a legitimate business, and left a decidedly positive mark on the business forever. And as for that revenge, the Wynn Corporation ultimately purchased the site of the New Frontier where Steve himself was forced to sell all those years earlier. The land where the casino once sat is barren, but the fence around the property, it's emblazoned with the signature of the man who came to Vegas all those years ago and tried to own a piece of it. My name is Steven, and if you're just browsing through, be sure to click subscribe and hit the bell for future uploads. And leave us a comment if you've ever been in a Wynn resort anywhere in the world, will you? That helps a lot with the channel. Thanks so much for watching. I love you, sweet Caroline. And we say goodbye with a 3, 2, 1, and click.